Hi guys, Jackie from Famished Farm. We're back in the kitchen this week making 3 new recipes. I'm still using my meal planning guides to keep me on track budget-wise, and it just makes it nice to know what I'm going to have for dinner during the week. That way I can make sure I've got all the ingredients I need and things just go much smoother. What's new this week? Last week was the holiday week and we did a lot of red meat last week, so we're doing a lot more chicken this week. And I've also included a fish taco. That's from cookingclassy.com. A second recipe is from Guy Fieri over at Food Network, and this one is a mouthful. Dirty peas, garlic, ginger, chicken thighs. And our final recipe is a hibachi chicken recipe that is a Copycat Benihana recipe. Okay guys, let's get cooking. The fish taco recipe calls for 1 pound of tilapia, cod, or mahi-mahi. In my case, at my Walmart in the frozen seafood section, I found nice thick mahi-mahi fillets, and I thought they'd do great on the grill. You want something a little bit thicker to hold up to the grilling. And I have thawed those. I generally thaw them in the bag with some water that I change out frequently, and then I patted them dry. Now we're going to add about, in my case, I added a tablespoon of vegetable oil. You add up to 2 tablespoons. And then we're going to prepare a freshly squeezed lime. In my case, these limes were pretty juicy, so I went ahead and just did 1, and I figured that'd be close to a 1.5 tablespoons. Notice too that before I cut these, I rolled them on the countertop. That's just to loosen up the fibers so you can juice it a little better. Now I do have fresh clove, so I'm going to be peeling this clove of garlic and then mincing it. And guys, if you don't have a clove of garlic or jarred garlic, do use your dry garlic or your tube of garlic, whatever you've got. I frequently don't have fresh garlic. I'm not a garlic connoisseur, and I use dry garlic a lot. Then we're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of chili powder, 1/2 teaspoon of ground cumin, and 1/2 teaspoon of paprika. Next, the recipe calls for 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and I know in our case that would be a little too much, so I'm just going to do a shake or two, and then I'm going to mix up the spices in with the fish. Now guys, I forgot to add salt and pepper, so I'm going to have to come back to that after I've already put it in the fridge and add in salt and pepper. So go ahead and do that right now before you do the mixing. Now the recipe instructions call for mixing the spices separately in a bowl, and she does say down in the recipe instructions to use 3/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. I didn't use hardly any salt, and I probably used 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. Okay, so she calls for marinating this for 20 to 30 minutes. If you've got to go longer than that, it's fine. Just put it in the fridge. Now, I don't think it marinated long enough. Really, the fish didn't have a lot of that spiciness from all the different dry spices, but we'll talk about that later. We're going to make the fish taco sauce, which is 1/4 cup of sour cream, 3 tablespoons of mayonnaise, 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, and I'm kind of battling with clumpy garlic, so I've got to try to get rid of the chunks of garlic here. And then we're going to add more fresh lime juice. Now you'll see me, I rolled the lime again, and in this case I'm just going to use 1/2 of this lime, and that will be about 1 tablespoon then of lime juice. And then just simply mix this up and you can throw it in the fridge. This does take me a little longer because of my clumpy garlic. I just wanted to make sure to get rid of all of the clumps. So she calls for using 1/3 cup of a Mexican cheese that I cannot pronounce. Cotija cheese, maybe. I instead know Rod is just probably going to prefer cheddar, so we use some extra sharp cheddar cheese for our tacos. So I am not going to actually slice this avocado. I'm just going to get it ready so I can quick pull the pit out in a few minutes, and we'll leave that sitting in this dish until I'm ready to do that. Instead of using the purple cabbage she calls for, I'm just going to use bagged coleslaw mix, and I throw a couple cups into a dish ready to go. We're going on vacation next week. I didn't know if I'd be able to use up a cabbage. And then we're going to warm up the corn tortillas in this casserole dish for, I think it was 10 minutes at 325. And then we're going to assemble, and I'm using my little taco boat things that I bought at Walmart. They were, I think, $5, $4 or $5 for a set of 4. And we're going to first start, obviously, with our little corn tortillas. And then we're going to put roughly a good heaping tablespoonful of the mix, probably equivalent of a couple tablespoons, just a nice layer of the fish mixture in each of these tacos. And then we're going to go ahead and work on the second set of tacos here. And just FYI, I was able to eat 2 of these tacos. Rod ate 3. I really expected him to eat more than that, but he is just not a fish taco guy. So this was not his favorite meal. In fact, I asked if I could make it again, and he just kind of snorted at me. So I think I'll continue getting my fish tacos when we go out to eat. Next layer is just a good bed of cabbage, and we'll do that on each of the tacos. Then I've got that avocado slice, that will be the next layer, and I give a nice generous slice on each one. And finally, you'll put your cheese on, whichever cheese you guys are using. Now, she also calls for 3 tablespoons of chopped cilantro. We are not cilantro people. You could use parsley, just plain parsley instead, but we just leave them as they are. They turned out pretty. They were pretty, but they weren't real flavorful. I was really surprised based on the amount of spice. So Personally, I would let these marinate a lot longer to see if that works. The fish taco sauce on top of them I thought was delicious, and we've saved it we'll repurpose it for another use. So this was okay, wasn't great. I just realized I didn't show the fish coming out of the fridge and into the grill basket and then onto the grill. Rod ended up cooking those for nearly 4 minutes on each side. Her recipe instructions for grilling said do 3 to 4 minutes, but be aware that the thickness of the fish is going to dictate how long you cook this. This is a super fast recipe to put together. The longest thing was cutting up chicken quarters into legs and thighs. I didn't have just thighs alone that were skin on and boneless. So I just used skin on, bone in, chicken quarters cut up. And we're just going to put those in a resealable bag, which you can see on the blue plate there. And then we're going to start preparing the vegetables. In this case, it calls for a red onion. You can see I had a yellow onion. And then I'm going to cut a little knob of fresh ginger off, and here I am peeling it. It did have kind of a bad spot in it, so I was working around that. It calls for 2 tablespoons of minced ginger and 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. And I'm going to end up using garlic powder for the minced garlic. And then it calls for thinly sliced onions, and I'm just slicing them. They're probably a 1/4 inch thick or so. I don't know if that's thin enough, but regardless, it worked. So we'll throw all of this then into our bag with the chicken parts. That's the onions. And here we'll slice and mince up this ginger quick and throw that in too. And then I'm still dealing with the bottle of clumpy garlic. I'm going to end up putting about a 1/2 teaspoon of the dry garlic in there. And a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. I always use low sodium on the soy sauce. And then a 1/4 cup of fresh tangerine or orange juice. Now, in my case, we've got some tangerines. We always have these little tangerines in the refrigerator, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to squeeze them. Just everything that's in there juice-wise is going to go into the bag. And I, of course, am going to reserve the skins, and I'm going to eat out the pulp here after a bit. It was delicious, even without all that juice. And then you can also add some fresh ground pepper and vegetable oil if you like. We left that out. It only said to use the oil on the grill. So here they are on the grill, and because these were bone-in, I'm going to say they took longer. We did roughly 25 to 30 minutes. Guys, instructions say they'll take 5 to 6 minutes per side. Guys, just make sure it's done. If you don't know if it's done, use your meat thermometer. Now, these were really good. I will tell you that if you eat the skin, they were excellent. Rod is a skin eater. I am not. And so I missed some of that flavor that was on the skin. I got the flavor that was in the skinless parts, but man, it was delicious. Next time, I think I'll leave the skin off. Sorry, Rod, you shouldn't be eating it anyway. And I think it'll be delicious with that soaking, the marinade soaking right into the actual meat. Make this, guys. It was good and quick. Guys, this was a really excellent recipe. It is worth the investment in your time making it. We're starting with a pound of chicken breast. You'll see there in the bag, they came out of the freezer and they've thawed. Now I'm dicing up some ginger, and I'm just going to put that in a little bowl. I'm going to add whatever is left in this little bottle of sesame oil. It calls for a tablespoon. That was probably not even a teaspoon. Then we'll add our soy sauce. I use, of course, the low sodium, 2 tablespoons, and then 2 tablespoons of hoisin. So you can see where this flavor is going. Now this is supposedly a copycat of Benihana's hibachi chicken. I've never had that. I can imagine how good it is because this recipe was excellent. The recipe calls for 4 cloves of garlic minced. I probably used half a teaspoon to a teaspoon of dry. Again, not garlic, people. Mix that up and just set it to the side. And now our chicken breast is perfectly thawed. If it was still kind of frozen, I'd probably use a knife. But I'm gonna, once I trim off the fatty pieces, I'm gonna switch to my scissors just to chunk these up into bite-sized pieces. The recipe calls for dicing the chicken breast. Mine were bigger than that. Like I said, more bite-sized than diced. If you are doing smaller pieces, keep an eye on your cooking time. At 10 minutes, these bigger chunks were done perfectly. If you cut them small, your cooking time is going to be less. So this is really a 4-part recipe. So we've already prepared the marinade and the chicken. Now we're gonna start looking at the fried rice portion of it. And basically I've got some jasmine rice here. I'm just gonna prepare 1 cup of the dried jasmine rice ready to go in to the water once it's boiling. Then we're gonna, before that though, we're gonna switch over, because actually I'm using bone broth and it's being defrosted as I'm doing this. We're gonna make the mustard sauce. So we're gonna use a half a cup of mayo, it calls for light, I'm using regular, a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, a tablespoon of soy sauce, a tablespoon of rice vinegar. And then you're gonna mix that up well. And I start out with a spoon and I switch over to a little mini whisk to get that well incorporated. Then I'm gonna put this into the fridge. And I will tell you, don't leave this in the fridge and forget about it. You'll want to add this to your meal. It was delicious. The final component is our sauteed vegetables. I'm starting out with a carrot, and this is actually, I don't even know how close to a carrot it is. I'm just gonna thinly slice whatever carrots I've got left in my bag here, and it was plenty, so I'll just tell you, do whatever you think is good for your family.
Then it calls for chopping a zucchini, doesn't specify what size. Mine is kind of on the small side, but I'm basically going to cut it into corners and then chop it from there. Keep in mind your carrots will want to be smaller than whatever you chop your zucchini because they're going to cook at different times. Then 1 cup of mushrooms. I use roughly half of this 8-ounce carton of white button mushrooms. And with that, I hear the timer ringing for the bone broth that's defrosting. Now it calls for 1.5 cups of liquid, and I've started using bone broth to cook my rice in, and it's delicious. I do that for my homemade dog food I make for my dog. I don't quite have 1.5 cups, so I'm going to supplement with a little bit of water. And then I'll put that on high heat with the lid on so it will come to a boil. Now, while I'm waiting for that to come up to temperature, we are going to go ahead and put our wok pan. This is a IKEA wok. Really nice. It's my favorite pan. It's about the only pan I use now. And I'm just going to turn the heat up to high, and we're going to try to bring this pan up to temperature, and you'll see me checking it a couple times to see if it's hot enough yet. So my pan is rocking away. It is obviously boiling in there now. So I add the jasmine rice. I give it a quick stir, put the lid back on. We're going to turn the temperature down to a simmer, and then I'll set my timer for 15 minutes. And I'm going to check the temperature on the wok again. Oops, I forgot to turn down the rice heat, so we do that. And then I want to just check to make sure that the sauce that's going to go on the chicken is going to sizzle when I put it in the pan. And yes, it does. So we're going to go ahead and add our chicken pieces to our hot wok. And then we're going to also add that little dish of our sesame oil sauce with soy, hoisin, and the garlic and ginger, and mix that up well. Now, this part, the recipe says you'll cook it for 10 minutes. For the size pieces that I had, it was perfect. 10 minutes was just right. If you cut your pieces smaller, I'll just caution you again that you may not want to cook that for the full 10 minutes. Just check it and make sure it's cooked to your liking. Now we're back over working on our pan of sauteed veggies. We're going to use, I think I just use half of this yellow onion, and I'm going to end up dicing it and then throwing that in the pan. Let's see, did I use the whole onion or just half? Looks like I used a half. The recipe, of course, called for a whole one. We are just periodically going to stir this chicken mixture down to make sure that it's cooking evenly and that the sauce coats everything. I think I did this maybe 5 or 6 times during the 10-minute cooking time. Definitely keep your eye on it. You don't want this to burn. You're cooking in the wok over pretty high temperature, so keep your eye on it, guys. So when this is done cooking, we're going to actually put the chicken into a separate serving dish. You can serve directly from whatever dish you're going to put this into, and then we're going to clean out the pan. Okay, here's my cleaned out wok. We're going to let that come up to temperature, add some oil, and then we'll add in our vegetables that are going to be sauteed. The recipe calls for adding a tablespoon of soy sauce, salt, and pepper to taste. I did add the soy sauce. I don't think I'd do that next time. I did not add any salt, and I did add some pepper. I think there's plenty of soy sauce taste in the chicken and in the fried rice. I don't think the vegetables needed it. So just a slight savings on your sodium budget. This is, let's face it, this type of food has a high sodium content any way you cut it, so if you can cut back anywhere, do it. The instructions say that you're going to saute these vegetables for about 5 minutes until they're tender crisp. And I'm going to actually taste them a couple different times throughout the cooking period just to make sure. And my cook time was slightly less than 5 minutes. And then I'm going to switch out a different serving dish for these vegetables, and we will, when they're done, put those in that serving dish. We have one more ingredient getting ready for the fried rice component, and that is a green onion. In my case, this is a really large green onion. It calls for 4 green onions. In the meantime, our rice, the timer has gone off, so we're going to give that a fluff, and then I'm just going to put the lid back on it, slightly ajar, and let that continue steaming a bit. We'll give our vegetables another stir. Oh, there was the taste. And, oh, maybe one more. Had to try a zucchini and a carrot, I think. And yes, those are done and ready to come off. Now, we don't have to clean the pan this time. We're just going to use it as is for the fried rice. So into our hot pan, we're going to put 2 tablespoons of butter. And then if you're using cloves of garlic, you're going to have 4 cloves of garlic minced. I'm going to just use my powdered garlic, but I am going to put it in the butter and let that kind of come up to temperature so it will be really fragrant. Even though it is powdered, you can still achieve that same effect just by toasting it in the butter a bit. So you'll want the rest of your ingredients close by. You'll need an egg and your bottle of soy sauce. We're going to throw the rice into the pan with the butter and the garlic. Then we're going to add 3 tablespoons of our soy sauce. Again, I'm using low sodium. You do you. And I'm back to my full tablespoon measure here, guys. And then I'm going to fluff this up, give it a good stir, get the butter and the garlic and the soy sauce all mixed into the rice. And basically you're mixing it till the color is even, because you'll have some brown bits from the soy sauce and some white rice that's still not mixed in. So just mix it till the color is cohesive. And then you're going to create a little well in the center of the pan, which is where we're going to scramble our egg. This egg was the lightest colored yolk I have ever seen in my life. It was like a barely lemon yellow egg yolk. And again, this is Walmart eggs, so you probably have pretty yolks from your farm-raised chickens or your expensive eggs you buy. No, me, just plain old eggs from Walmart. This is going to take roughly, and this is still high heat, guys, about 30 seconds, definitely under a minute to scramble this egg. You're just going to let it set in the center there and give it a quick stir every now and then to keep it on the heat. And then once it's done, you're just going to mix it throughout the rice. Have not forgotten the green onions. About now, I'm going to run over, grab that tray of green onions, put that in, and then we'll give that a quick mix too. And you're basically just going to cook this to bring everything up to temperature. And then you can remove your pan from the heat. I'm actually just going to serve my rice right in this pan, so I'm going to keep it in the wok, and I'll move that over to a hot pad over on my table. Guys, you know you've got a good recipe when after you're done eating, your husband says, hey, the next time we have company, let's make this. So it's not a recipe that I would cook every week. It's not going into a weekly rotation because it's too high in sodium. But if you treat this like a meal that you would have going out, then I can put it on the list. So guys, the cooking time on this was under 50 minutes, what he's said, or he or she, Taylor Stinson. So that was dead on. The instructions were excellent. Just everything about it, I cannot tell you enough. Please make this recipe. It was delicious, delicious, delicious. Oh, and it's rated 4.9 stars out of 5. So that's how good it was. Guys, thanks for being here. Come back next week.